Section 2 is slab projects. There are many different things that you can do with slabs. Our first one is exploring texture with the nature stamps. This is a great beginning, simple way to start your experience with clay. The second section is on bas-relief tiles, and they are great for kindergarten all the way up through 6th grade. You can adapt them to whatever subject matter you might be studying. I've included 2 tiles, a dark black one from Northern Ireland with very 3D figures, and a flatter Mexican tile of a jaguar. It's a good idea to show your students work of other artists whenever you have the opportunity. The third section is wall pockets. There's a simple one with texture on it, some birds with wing pockets, and a variety of possibilities. They can be very creative with this section. Now we're going to move on to slab projects. And again, I'm going to really try and keep this good and simple. You do need to buy some things from KCDA. Oh, you should order a fettling knife, which is great for cutting clay into smaller pieces. It's not sharp at all. The hardware store, you need to buy some sticks and rollers. If you teach kindergarten, you probably want to get these thicker. You need 2 at a time to make thicker support. You're going to use this to either side of your clay when you roll out your slabs. For older children, depending on what you're making, you probably will use the thinner ones. But as you see, it stretches in this direction. So using just 1 stick, always tell the children to start in the middle, stand up when you do this because you're a lot stronger. This takes muscles. Kindergartners can do this. They like it because they have to really use their muscles. So lean over and go forward and back, forward and back. So 1 stick or 2 makes quite a big difference. If you want to check if you're finished, say, am I done? Is that okay? You take your stick and push it down in the middle. If you've left a mark, then you need to do a little bit more. So that's how you know if you're finished or not. So I'd like to show you first of all what you can do with these nature stamps, because I really love using them. The children love using them. There's just so many different things that you can do with them. So start keeping your eyes to the ground and collect things. Pine cones are great. Shells are great. Twigs of various sorts, little piece of rope. So I'm just going to show you what they do. So this shell, push it, wiggle it a little bit. I encourage the children to try on a scrap of clay first. Some tools you will roll. This is a piece of a forsythia, which makes a very nice textured stamp. I'm rolling slowly. I tell the children that it's not a good idea to go like this. Doesn't work. I usually show them the wrong way to do something. It kind of makes an impression and they don't do it that way. Okay, a peach pit makes a really great stamp too. So you can roll stamps along, you can push them, you can use them in a variety of different ways. Here's the rope going along. This isn't exactly a nature stamp, but it's okay. Pine cones make great scales on reptiles or fish. Bigger pine cones too. Try different ways to use the same stamp too. This is a eucalyptus seed pod. You can make a nice design with that. However, this one's clogged with clay. My very favorite is an abalone shell. If you find small abalone shells in shell shops, and you will roll the holes of the abalone around to where the curly part is down there, it makes a wonderful design. It takes a little practice, but elementary age children can get this. That's a very, very cool stamp. Poppies. So someday you might just have a good time playing and experimenting with these stamps. I'm going to turn this over and smooth it out a little bit and show you something else to do. You can take a fern piece of cedar. You don't want anything that's too stiff, like a holly leaf would not work. It's too stiff. And the ferns that have the spores on the back are particularly beautiful. So you can set that down, gently press it a bit into place. We'll try this one too. And you want to put the leaves on there with the bumpier side down, like for the ferns, with the spores down. And then you're going to find a piece of plastic, and I'm going to put this on top of my clay, smooth as possible, but cling wrap, plastic wrap works much better. So I'm putting this down here, and I'm going to gently push my leaf into the clay, and I'm going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, gently smoothing it into the clay. They'll ask you over and over, am I done? Feel it. Can you feel it? You're not done. So keep going, keep going, keep going. These are really easy beginning projects to do. No attaching together, nothing to fall apart. You don't need, so that has been pushed in. You don't need to take it off, but of course, everybody wants to look at it and see how it looks. And so, you can see a very beautiful leaf print in this. It's a little difficult for the younger children to get them off. If you're rolling slabs and you're going to be using a pattern, let's say if you were going to be making a bird, which I'll be showing you very soon. So I'm getting back to a kind of smooth slab again. So if I was going to make a bird, and I have my pattern, and I try to fit it on here, and it doesn't fit. So we'll need to add more clay onto this slab. The thing is that you want to make sure that your clay overlaps. So you see that you need some here. Put it down. Don't just put it here. Overlap it on top of the clay slab that you already have. Take another piece. Overlap it. You don't need to stick it down other than pushing it because you're going to be rolling it. Then just roll it into the surface just like you did the first time. Check it. Okay, so then you would cut that out using your paper clip tool. And as you do this, pay attention that your paper clip is down on the mat. You can hear a noise. So make sure that you can hear that noise as you're cutting, because if you have not cut all the way through, you won't be able to pull it off. When you finished cutting, you want to pull the extra pieces away first and then take the bird off. We're going to get to making this in a little while. There's one more thing I wanted to show you, and it's a nice, easy, quick way to use the nature stamps or the fresh fern, is that you can have each child get 4 or 5 balls of clay. Make sure you've wet them. I have wet them already. Push them a little bit flat, I say going from a meatball to a hamburger, and then put your sticks to the side and you roll them out. These make perfect wind chimes or mobiles. You can decorate them with the same stamps that we used before, and remember to put a hole in them. A chopstick's a great tool too. Put a hole in the top, wiggle it, make sure that it's gone through the back, okay? So that's a very easy project. You can hook them onto a branch and send it home for Christmas. When you store flat tiles, it's a little bit like a potato chip. If you have a lot of air on the top, it's going to dry on the top and it's going to curl up. So if you are storing something that let's say you've made a large nature tile with stamps on it, and you want to make sure it's not going to turn into a potato chip shape, then you want to put it in your box and put plenty of newspaper on top. Maybe you can put some old magazines on it too, just to keep it from warping. And let it dry slowly. Don't be in a hurry. If you try to dry it quickly, it will warp. Another thing is that after maybe 2 or 3 days, take them out, turn them upside down so that they'll be drying on both sides fairly evenly. One project that I really, really love to do, I've done it with kindergarten through 6th grade, is a bas-relief tile. There they are. And this is a 2nd grade. This is kindergarten. This is an adult. And this also is a 2nd grade. So we're going to talk about how to do these. Because we're going to be making a tile, we don't want to start with a ball of clay this time. So I'm going to cut an even slice of clay. And we don't need that much. And I'm going to try rolling this with the double sticks and see what size I get. It's really, really a good idea to do these ahead of time so you know how much clay you want to pass out for your project. It's a whole lot easier than having everybody having the wrong size and having to start some things over or cut them down to size. Okay, so I'm going to just call that my tile. You can, if you want to, use patterns and have them cut them rigidly, but I actually prefer the more free-form shape. It's easier, and I think they look really nice. So when I'm making the dinosaurs for the kindergartners, they don't quite get the idea of this dinosaur up against the wall. So what I have done is I've taken a dinosaur and said that we're going to make this dinosaur to look a little bit like this, but we're not making the whole dinosaur. We're just making the front half of them. So let's think about this dinosaur standing up next to the wall. This takes a little bit of clarification for the younger children. Sometimes they want to wrap clay around the plastic dinosaur. So, and some of them, there's 1 or 2 will eventually stand them up like this. So it takes a little extra explaining for the younger children, but they can do this. So also, just like shaping what we did before, you'll be taking your pieces of clay and shaping them, and remember that you don't need them to be 3D full size. You can have them be a little bit thinner, so you'll want to push them down and pinch them into shape, and when you decide that you like that shape, you can attach them directly onto this slab. But I usually, for older students, will have a variety of pictures available for them to look at. This is a great book that has just about everything that you would want in it, so they can get some idea of how these things are shaped. When you're cutting out things to put onto here, I prefer to start with a rounded shape, rounded ball, flatten it and put it on, but some people will prefer to roll out something and cut it out with the paper clip. We're going to show you how to make this dinosaur, and keep in mind that anything you're studying works with this project. We did a fantastic one on Egypt in the 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Some of the best stuff I've ever done with that class. So generally the children, I think, will make their clay too big to fit on the tile. So I'm thinking that that would be a good size, and I look at my dinosaur and I say, yeah, that looks pretty good, maybe even a little smaller. And so I'm not going to shape this a lot, but pretty good, and stick it on here with my fork. And this isn't very thick, because I don't want it to stick out a lot. Push it down, make sure it's well attached. So that's going to turn out to be his body. Next I'm going to do his neck. Long, thin neck, and his head really isn't any bigger than his neck is. So I'm going to, the reason I like to do this, if I were trying to do this dinosaur standing up, it would be so much more difficult that I wouldn't even try it. Okay, so that's going to turn into a neck there, and a head on the end. But the reason this works well is because it has the strength of the tile behind it to make it work. Now I've noticed that he has a little crest on his head. So I'm just going to take my fingers, and when clay gets too wet, it gets slippery. So avoid having the kids use too much water. I'm going to use my finger upside down to make that little crest that's on his head. And I've made a little eye with my pen point, and I'm taking my toothpick and push it in for a mouth. And of course, don't forget his nostrils, please. If you wiggle it in there, it makes his nostrils flare out. You can also do that with a pencil. Make nostrils that flare out. And I'm going to decorate that little crest part with my pencil. I want to blend his neck in with the rest of his body. Now, I look at that tail and I say, that's pretty fat where it connects, and it gets to be real skinny down at the end. But I also need to make it fit on my tile, so I'm going to have to bend mine around a lot more. Okay. And do make sure that nothing's hanging off over the edge like that. So it could go up or it could go down. I think mine will go up. I'm overlapping this a little bit because I think the shape will work better. But I also need to remember to blend it in. My fingers are dry. Push down on this a little bit more. And now I've got 2 front legs, 2 back legs. These are pretty thick. What's interesting about these lizard-like things, their back legs come up here quite a bit. So I'll see if I can make that happen. And I'm looking how this bends. So I'm going to try and put this up like this and then make a little foot down at the bottom. I think that should work. I see even dinosaurs have toes. Okay. I want this to flatten out a little bit, so I'm pushing on it, blending it in. And I'm just going to draw that other leg that I can't see very well. I'm just going to draw that with my pencil. Now, give him some toes. front legs are quite a bit smaller. They also come up like this. He's got a little elbow I see right there. It's making an elbow. You fold your clay, pinch it out a little bit like that. Make a foot. Try it on for size. Good to go. It's turning out pretty cute. I'm going to blend this clay in. You can draw his front leg, the other one on too if you like. Just suggesting it. Or if you wanted to make it out of clay that was not sticking out much, you could do that too. Now, I'm going to guess that he's a reptile that has scales on him. And so I'm going to look into my treasure chest of nature stamps. And I'm going to roll scales on his body with this little pine cone, slowly working my way all along. When you come to paint those later on too, they will make the paint job look a lot more interesting. So I would continue doing that over his entire body. Now, for hanging these up, you can either make one hole or two. If you make two holes, then somebody needs to have a cord that comes up. So if you want a quicker way, you can just eyeball and make one hole, wiggle it, check that it's gone through all the way, and hang it up like that. And don't forget to put your initials on the back. I ask children to make big, large initials gently with a pencil, so you can read them later on. It's very, very hard to read initials later on. Okay, now we're going to talk about another slab project. This is it. This can be done with kindergartners, and it also, in a more complicated version, which would be the bird, can be done with older students. So, getting quite a mess on this table, aren't we? So this was an older student who made this pattern himself. Don't give the patterns to children, let them make their own, please. They'll be so much better than yours. Sorry. Okay, so now I'm going to take a piece of clay and quickly make it into a ball, and then I'm going to turn it into a hamburger. The hamburger must be thicker than the sticks. Directions for using sticks. For the younger children, these are like the railroad tracks. This is the train. It has to stay on the tracks. The sticks do not touch the clay. Stand up, start in the middle, push up and down and up and down. Sometimes children will run off the end of the sticks and create a totally useless thin part on the clay. So we'll just turn that under, get rid of it. If you get clay stuck on your rollers, that's an easy way to get it off. So this is going to be a fairly small pocket for the kindergartners, and we don't need any patterns at all. You, dear teacher, will come along and simply make a little cut like down here, and then you're going to put the pocket onto that part. So I'm just going to come along and cut this off, and imagine that we're going to hook this onto there. We'll cut off this extra part as well, and we're going to make something very much like that. So you roll out your slab, and because you started with a hamburger, you end up with this oval shape. So then you cut off some. You could actually even probably turn it up this way, which might look nice. And the next thing is the fun part of using the nature stamps. So you're going to use all of these stamps to decorate this and to decorate this, remembering that decorations down here aren't going to show because they're going to be behind the pocket. So let's say that we have this whole thing nicely decorated. I would come along and shape this a little bit for the student because I don't like that square look on it, but for kindergartners, it's better that you do that quickly and just move on. So let's assume that we've got this beautifully decorated with our nature stamps, and we're going to attach this pocket onto here. So I make a little tiny mark how far up the pocket goes, just very small. And so I know I need to scratch all this area here. I don't need to scratch here, nothing's sticking there. So just scratching the edge. This is a tiny bit harder, but they can do this too. Hold it in your hand, scratch this edge. Do we need to scratch this edge? No, it's not sticking to anything. That's open. That's the open part of the pocket. And you will be happy if you have parents there to help you too. Now, I teach them to take their hand like this in the pocket, set it down where their lines are, and gently start attaching it to the clay. Don't push the middle, just push along the edges. I can see I've got some extra clay there, and I'll just trim it off. I also encourage them to take their finger and smooth edges. Cut clay usually has a very sharp, unpleasant edge, and when it's fired it can be quite sharp. So you want to make sure that those are smoothed down nicely. You're going to only need one hanging hole for this, so your chopstick comes up to the top, not too close to the top, about 1/4 of an inch. Put it down and wiggle it, and best if you put the initials on the back because this is a little difficult for young children to do. Okay. Further extensions of that same project are this bird that we've rolled out, this clay bird. Before, we would need to roll out another piece to become the wing. Cut out the pattern. Then the whole bird, same as the little pocket we just made, the whole bird can be decorated with texture stamps, with these nature stamps, so that when you come to paint this, and we'll do that in another video, the paint will capture all of these depressions and make them even more noticeable. The technique is the same. Let's say that we've put nature stamps all over this. A little line at the beak looks good. I'm going to just make a little eye with this eraser, but you're going to do it with a ballpoint pen because you'll be able to find it. And then you're going to scratch the back edge of this. And what I usually do is to mark it, is that I will scratch the wing first. Then I'll wet it. I found the pen. Then I'll wet it and set it where I want it. Pick it up, and it's made a nice mark. So now I can scratch there. It's made a wet spot where it's touching. If their clay is very wet and kind of floppy, you can always put a little piece of paper towel in there to hold it up. Again, remember to smooth these edges because they can be very, very sharp and unpleasant. Here's an eye for a bird. There. And same thing with hanging holes. You can make 1 or 2. It's a pretty nice bird. I think we should give him 2. That means you'll need to get some cord and have somebody string them up with some cord. I think we're finished. We're done.